Hello, everyone. My name is Antoinette, and I work in implementation and customer success for Cubico in the United States. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by Shawn Richard, who joins us with a deep background in dining and hospitality. He worked for 5 years at Holiday Retirement, the largest provider for independent living in America. And as the former vice president of Holidays Dining, he was responsible for overseeing 240 communities that produced over 24.5 million meals a year. And prior to joining Holiday, Shawn spent more than 15 years working for large corporate restaurant chains that include Darden Restaurants, the parent company of Red Lobster, Olive Garden, and Longhorn Steakhouse. And he also worked at Applebee's and Panera Bread. So, Shawn, thank you very much for participating today. It's absolutely lovely to have you with us.
It's my pleasure, Antoinette. Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So, we're going to be talking today really about how to choose and implement a POS system within senior living. So, firstly, you spent many years in the restaurant business before coming to senior living. And why did you think that bringing in the POS was such an important tool to transfer from the restaurant industry to add to dining and hospitality in senior living?
Great question. So I think when you go out to eat in today's world, it's really hard to find a restaurant that doesn't use a point of sale system in their day-to-day operations. Even the
Mm.
small mom and pop locations have embraced the power of the tool. And when you stop to think about a single senior living property and the amount of meals that they make on a daily basis, it's really no different than a restaurant. If you're running more than one location, those number of meals start to add up pretty quickly. So point of sale systems offer a wealth of data, which is why they've probably been so broadly adopted in the restaurant space. And that data helps make informed decisions to run a smarter and better run operation. When people tend to think about point of sale system, they think about the sales side of it, to charging and collecting a fund for services provided. Since this is not the main objective for senior living dining programs, people are quick to dismiss the idea of using one. But there's so much more data that is collected every time you ring in an order on a POS that once you've experienced using one, you understand the true value of the system. These can be used in meal preparation, staffing, ordering. And when you stop to think about it, these restaurants inside senior living, they really are almost $1 million a year operations. And in today's world, no one runs $1 million a year operations with pen and paper anymore.
No, and yes, if you've got, and you, for example, had $240 million operations, so accumulating all that data together does make sense.
Absolutely.
So you've obviously understood the importance of data, but how do you then approach the stakeholders to convince them that bringing in a POS is the right direction? How do you really build the business case?
Yeah, so I think it starts with what I talked about in the previous answer. That's how you start the conversation with the stakeholders. But that really just starts to open the idea and open the discussion. And although there are a lot of similarities between restaurants and dining programs in senior living, there's also a lot of differences. So the use case for senior living existed. I just needed to build out the right return on investment to present. All too often, dining is just seen as a cost center in the larger business model for senior living. Adding additional costs without showing the value is a difficult business case. So I focused on a couple different areas, some direct ROI, some indirect ROI, and they kind of all started with the POS system and then built from there. So one is production planning. And production planning is really the amount of food that you prepare on a given day based upon the menu that you have. So food waste was the number one area of opportunity. In a pen and paper system, unless someone takes the time to tally up all the orders at the end of the day, there's no real way to see how much of each item is ordered. By having that information, it allows the chef to record how much is being served and allow them to be better prepared the next time that they have that menu item coming up. So we started by having the chefs before the POS system just start to record how much food was left over at the end of every shift. In a restaurant setting, the national average for food waste is about 7 to 8% of the food that comes into the building gets wasted. In senior living, we saw that number much higher, closer to 20 to 25% of the food that was being prepared getting thrown out at the end of every shift.
Wow.
So to put that into dollars, if you had $6 a day budget to feed your residents, $1.20 wasn't going on the plate. It was either going into the trash or the chef was trying to figure out a way to reuse it. And that dollar amount doesn't include the labor to make the food or the cost to haul away the garbage at the end of the day. So by having the actual number of items ordered, the chef can prepare the right amount of food the next time that menu cycle happens. Or if it's a new menu cycle, they could see what was the last time I had a beef dish go against a chicken dish and what was ordered, and they then use that in the production planning. So the plan wasn't, to have zero waste and to run out of food every shift. It was really just to cut that 20% in half. And I think the tricky part here is that money was never really going to go back to the company or go back to the budget. So it's not a true return on investment. What it is was a plan to put that money back on the plate to enhance the dining program. So we all ask for more money every year to be able to increase the amount of food and the quality of the food that we're serving to the residents. This was an easy way to really kind of find that money yourself and increase your own budget internally. I think go ahead.
No, and also, I guess on a sustainability level as well, if you're not throwing away 20% of the food, which seems like an astonishing amount, if say putting that money back on the plate and not throwing it away just goes with the values of senior living, of trying to live a better and more sustainable way.
It really does. And from a green initiative, which is also a pretty hot topic right now, food waste is the #1 producer of greenhouse gases in landfills today. So it's not only the right thing to do for our seniors, it's the right thing to do for the earth and for the future generations as well. I think the other area that, the POS system where you have a direct ROI and the real offset of the incremental cost can be found is in revenue leakage. So guest meals and room delivery charges. Having guests in the dining room is great. The only problem is having an easy solution to be able to collect those funds. So that way they will actually get collected. It's hard to tell how many guests join on a day-to-day basis. So what we did is we looked at special occasions, holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Mother's Day. We knew we had more guests in the building those days, but at the end of the day, we did not see an uptick in revenue. And it's our fault for making it so complicated to be able to get those charges put onto a resident account to be charged at the end of the month and then to collect those funds. The POS, very easy way for us to now track guests in the dining room and have them pay for their experience while they're there. Same thing for room deliveries. Having a POS system where if a room delivery is checked, that charge is automatically flowed through to the resident's account, makes it a lot easier. And all of those funds that are collected between the guest meals and the room delivery charges, those can easily offset the cost of a POS system.
And for a guest coming in, it's absolutely instinctive to pay for a meal when you're eating the meal. It's not, you wouldn't expect it to be sort of your parents' monthly bill at the end of the month if you're coming in for Thanksgiving. So
I mean, absolutely, right? No one goes out to eat at a restaurant and thinks that they're not home to pay. So you're right, it's very, very natural. Mm-hmm. And then I think a unique future state use for a POS system is really for budgeting. So in today's world, budgets for food and labor that are used to make and serve the food are based on the resident count in the building. But you can have two buildings that have the exact same resident count, but the number of people that actually come down and eat and use the dining room and use the dining program can vary significantly. One community can be in a rural setting where you have very high usage, very high percentage of people coming down to the dining room every single day. Another location could be more urban setting where there's other restaurants around and the resident base could be a little bit more active in going out to those restaurants. It's not really fair that the chef that has more people joining them in the dining room has to work harder to achieve their goals than the chef that has less. So basically, the better you make your dining program and the more the residents like it, the harder it becomes for the chef to hit their end of month budgets. With a POS system, you could look at participation and start to use that data to build budgets with. It's a much better business model for the chef than just census alone.
Absolutely. And then I guess as well as, making it linked to how many people are using it, also establishing the best practices. Why are 90 people coming in one community and 65 in the other, so that they can learn from one another and improve the experience globally at the organization?
Absolutely. And Today, without a POS system, that's hard to spot unless, you are in the dining room or it's a self-reported number from the chef. There's no easy way for me to see into the communities to see who's actually using the dining program. So you're absolutely right. You could start to pick out those use cases and look to see why there's differences and maybe partner those two chefs up to see if we could help each other out.
Absolutely. So production planning, revenue leakage, and budgeting. You've convinced your stakeholders after many conversations that it's the right thing to do and they agree. How do you then move forward in choosing the right vendor to partner with? Because POS, there seems to be a million of those out there these days.
Yeah, it is a challenge. There are a lot of POS solutions out there. The majority of them focus on your typical business model. So finding the right POS solution for senior living is hard. Even within senior living, there are many different dining models. Spend down accounts, cycle menus of every shape and size and variety, different dining rooms within one community. So when we looked at vendors, we looked at a couple different criteria to be able to have the right partner. So one was the ability to change our program in the future. I think dining in senior living is constantly evolving. And if you look at colleges, for example, 20 years ago, I would say they had a very similar program to dining in senior living. If you walk into a college dining room today, I think you can see the vast difference in how that business has evolved and how potentially senior living could evolve as well. So we didn't want to invest in a solution that worked today, but as we continued to grow, would become obsolete. Quick and easy is never the best solution when it comes to IT solutions. So finding a vendor that would fit our need today, but also had the ability to do all of the different models that exist was a must. And that would allow us to pivot without having to start over or incur huge development costs. I think the second one is the vendor had to have the ability to tie into our legacy systems. And this is where the POS system as a whole can become even more powerful. The resident database, our financial systems, our employee database are all important. So having them tie into the resident database, I think is a little bit different than what exists out there in the world for restaurant space. In the restaurant space, it's anonymous. You don't need to know that Mr. Smith from apartment 101 is the person eating in your dining room. In senior living, I think it's more important to have that information because having it tied to that specific resident, we can see when they're using the dining room and if their habits start to change. So if Mr. Smith starts coming down less and less, we could check in on him. Is it a satisfaction issue? Is Mr. Smith unhappy or unwell? And when you start to think about ROI, if you can intervene in a situation like that and save Mr. Smith from becoming too unhappy to the point where that he's looking to move out, huge return on investment right there. The financial side, this is part of the business case we spoke about before, but having the ability to easily charge for guest meals and room trip charges is the key. So having a tie into that financial system, so when those charges happen, those flow directly into the bank account, really unique and helpful for us. And by having that type of feature as well, it would be much easier in the future if you have an all-inclusive model and you want to go down to a spend down model or a wallet, you'd be able to have that flexibility and have that built right in. And kind of the unique thing there with combining financial and resident. So let's just say you wanted to make a change and go from all-inclusive to a spend down model. The beauty is all your current residents, they don't have to change. They could stay on that all-inclusive plan the entire time that they live in the building. Any new residents, you could set up a different plan for. And so having that flexibility to have different people on different plans would help us, again, kind of change systems in the future if we wanted to.
And residents, I guess, also like to see what their spend down is. And we know that that's a kind of thing that they want to see printed on their receipt. So it does have to be linked to them personally, and it can't just be, table 31, seat 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, kind of liking it to college, that's how they do it there. Also, when you are doing that spend down model, to your point, how much money do I have left? Why is that important? Can I add more? All those things, the residents will ask questions about. So you're absolutely right. And then I think that the last system that's important for it to tie into is the employee database. And the reason why there is it just makes it easier for the community on a day-to-day basis who are actually using the system. So new employees don't have to be added in multiple different locations. It just flows seamlessly from your employee database right into the system. So as new servers come on board, they're automatically have access into the system, and when they leave, they automatically get removed from the system. So all of that would make it much easier for the community management to be able to use a system like this.
And I guess with all that changeover, is the ease of use of the platform important as well? Because you need to obviously train all the new servers who come on, and if there is a lot of turnover in that area of the community, you don't want your community manager to be spending their time training.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So servers are the highest turnover position in the restaurant industry and probably in senior living as well, right? It's a constant turnover. So you're right, ease of use, having it be intuitive, really, really important because you're investing hours into new employees to try to train them on a complicated system over and over again is also a big drain on the community. So you're absolutely right. That's another one that makes it easier for the community managers on a day-to-day basis if the system has good training and also has an intuitive use case to it.
Thank you. So you went through this whole process at Holiday Retirement and ended up choosing the Cubico Hospitality Suite for the POS. In your opinion, why did Cubico's Hospitality Suite stand out?
Yeah, so Cubico's POS system not only checks all the boxes that we've been talking about, but I think even more importantly, it's connected into the entire universe of resident engagement. Cubico allows a company to use different features that are right for that company at that time, but also allow for growth. So the days of having a different system for each area of the business that are siloed and don't talk to each other are gone. Companies really should be looking at solutions that are integrated and can easily tap into larger legacy systems like resident database, the employee database, financial that we talked about. I think in today's world, we take for granted how much data we share with companies that we do business with. Every app on your phone not only sees what you're doing when you use it, but also whenever you use your phone. The loyalty cards that we swipe at stores that we shop at do the same thing. So we have residents that live with us for over 2 years. In today's world, most of that interaction after they moved in is stored in the heads of the staff that they interact with on a day-to-day basis. I think it's time for senior living to get smarter with each interaction our residents have with us, because not only will this make us better as a operator and a provider, but will also make the experience to the resident much better. So Cubico allowed us to bring dining, activities, maintenance requests, transportation requests, and suggestions all into one system that's easy to use for the residents and the staff. The communities could make better decisions for their residents, and us as a company could start to finally see things on how the residents were using the offerings that we have in ways that we never could before. Not only is this better for current residents, but it also could potentially help us attract future residents.
Absolutely. If you understand better what the actual resident experience is, you can then actually personalize the onboarding of new residents when they move in, or attracting potential residents by actually not presuming what they want, but really understanding their true needs.
I think that's an important part, the tailoring the experience for new residents. Moving into senior living communities can be scary for these new residents, right? People have well-established routines and friendships inside the building. So being able to really help guide them in those first couple of weeks to things that they're going to enjoy, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's a really powerful use case for a system like this.
It really is kind of like moving into college. When you come at the beginning, everything's scary and you don't really know what you enjoy, but if you don't know how to find it and how to get there, and so I do think it is quite a similar experience.
Absolutely.
At a very different point in your life. So thank you for all of this. I think it was really very useful. If you had one final thing to say, sort of advice to give to a dining director that is looking to bring in a POS system into their community, what sort of critical advice would you give to them to help them on their journey?
Yeah, I would probably tell them, one, don't give up. This isn't this wasn't a 1 week exercise to get everything signed off on and get everyone aligned and agree on it. So do your work up front and don't stop pitching your case. I think it's also important that once you get approval, you have to understand you're actually really just starting. So taking the time to explain the reasons and the value to the system to the people in the field that are using it is just as, if not even more important than getting the approval to move forward. Change is always hard, and helping teams through that is probably the most critical part of success. Because if that system isn't used and used properly, none of the business cases that you pitched will end up coming to fruition. So, keep that in mind, and like I said, just don't give up. Keep pushing your agenda until people start to understand and agree with you.
And what, for example, made it successful, do you think, in the rollout at Holiday Retirement? Did you do all 240 communities at once? How did you approach that and the change management on your end?
Yeah, great. So we started with 10% of the company, so roughly 23 communities, where we rolled it out 3 months before we rolled it out to the rest of the company. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One, to learn any learnings that we had from the rollout so we could pivot and shift before the much larger group. Two, to build some champions, people that were using the system and started to understanding the value of it out in the field. So if a community had questions, they had a peer that they could reach out to. And then, we then launched the remaining 220 communities really simultaneously. And I think the learnings that we had from that first wave and the training and the tools that Cubico provided made it really easy for us to roll out the 220 simultaneously. But every company is different. Every company has gone through rollouts in the past, so I think that will be different no matter where you go. So if you follow the proven path at your company, I'm sure you'll see the same level and measurement of success that we did.
Well, let's end on that positive note. Thank you very much for your time, Shawn. It was lovely to spend this time and have this conversation with you.
Antoinette, thank you for having me. It was great talking to you, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about something I'm passionate about.
Thank you very much.